Last Easter, I went through an experience that changed my life and ruined my family. I think it's best to finally say what happened and hopefully warn others. Times have been tough for everyone over the past few years. I've been working 2 part-time jobs on top of making crafts to sell. It started as small resin projects that turned into an almost entire side business. If I wanted to make more money, I needed to invest in some equipment and some supplies. Mostly, I needed a decent camera and editing program to make videos to boost online sales. After buying a few things, I realized I would not be able to pay rent at the end of April unless I picked up a lot of shifts or sold extra items. I normally avoid signing up for local craft shows if they're for holidays besides Christmas. I didn't want to sink supplies into Easter items that didn't sell well, and I would be stuck with them until next year. A friend of mine said Easter market was good for sales and the table cost wasn't much. I bit the bullet and signed up for the table. And then I spent a week of nearly sleepless nights scrambling to make products. The market gave me a table outside. The weather warmed up, so it wasn't a problem. The market soon flooded with people because of the nice weather, and most people had the day off work. I did well in sales and got too busy for the first 3 hours to notice the other tables and booths around me. I normally see the same people at each event. Most of them I was friendly with. I looked around to see if I knew anyone. Around lunchtime, I made a quick washroom run. I took my cash with me and I asked people running the table beside me to watch over my stuff. I never had any issues leaving my table for a few minutes before. As I walked back, I paused at the table with a small pen set up. It was the source of the cardboard boxes with air holes people had been carefully carrying around on that day. I assumed some sort of cat adoption might be going on at the market. I adopted my cat from one of them and he came home in a small box. Instead of cats, a table was selling rabbits. I stared at them, not liking the idea of rabbits being sold over Easter weekend. Each only cost about $10, with a deal to buy 2. The person at the table noticed me staring at them and gestured me to come closer. "Would you like to see some of our cute bunnies?" he offered. I looked over at my table, seeing no one was waiting to buy something. I had a few minutes to talk. "Don't you think it's not a good idea to sell rabbits right now?" I asked, trying to keep the judgment out of my voice. The man wore a pastel blue shirt that wasn't tailored properly. He held a fake smile on his face. Something about his expression set off alarms in my head. His brown hair was the same color as the rabbits he was selling. "What do you mean? Isn't this the best time to get one?" he answered. "That's the problem. Parents think it would be a great idea to buy this cute kitted bunny because it's Easter. It's an impulse buy in some cases. They don't put the right amount of research into what kind of care a rabbit might need, and selling an animal at a market like this isn't the best either. How do you know they're going to get a good home?" I pressed. His expression changed, and I got embarrassed for chewing him out like this. I normally would never talk to people in this way, but for the sake of the poor rabbit sold today, I wanted him to be aware of these issues so he might not do it again. Or he simply didn't care and wanted an easy money selling rabbits near Easter might bring in. "I inherited a rabbit farm from my uncle. These rabbits were being bred and raised for meat. After he died, I didn't want them to be killed but to be raised as pets. I don't have too many options for where they go. And honest shelters around here do have an animal limit, and I didn't want to overwhelm them. Any profits are going to shelters, and I just hope some of these rabbits go to a good home. If they don't, I figure they might have a slightly better life than getting slaughtered," he explained in an honest tone. Now I feel bad for chewing him out. I understood why he decided to unload them at the market, but I didn't overly agree with it either. There was nothing I could do. I saw a few people stop in front of my table. I didn't have time to talk with this man. "I do hope they all find good homes today," I told him and gave him an odd smile. I didn't dwell on his expression and rushed back to work. When I got closer, I regretted going back. I wish I could have stayed until this group moved on. I never expected to see them here, but we lived in the same city, so it was understandable we would cross paths again. My aunt and my uncle with my niece were looking over my items. For a second, my aunt was tempted to buy something, but their faces dropped when they saw who ran the table. My uncle gave me a dirty look, but my aunt didn't hide her pity. Are you running this booth with your girlfriend? Men don't make crafts, my uncle said, causing me to sigh. Good thing I'm not a man, I said with a shrug. His cheeks tinted a slight of shade red. He wanted to go off, but my aunt stopped him. My niece wasn't paying attention. Her tiny hands were playing with some of the resin unicorn trays I made. If she wanted one, I would have given it to her. I tried sending them over Christmas presents, but they would always get sent back or end up on the Facebook marketplace the next day. My aunt placed a hand on his shoulder and he scoffed. He grabbed her daughter's hand and forced her to walk down the rows of tables away from mine. They stopped at the rabbit booth while my aunt stayed behind to speak with me for another minute. How about you go to this church I found? Everyone's pretty accepting. They do have a few people like yourself, my aunt said as she scrambled to write down a name and address. I was tempted to tell her no, I wouldn't. But I just smiled and took the paper from her. She was still family. They had their issues, but I understood their reasoning. At least she still wanted to help me in her own way. She hurried away to her husband not to upset him by staying around me for too long. The encounter wasn't the worst one we've had. I kept an eye on them in case they came back this way. They left the rabbit booth with the cardboard box in hand. I doubted they had their house ready for a rabbit and just bought their daughter what they thought would be a cute Easter gift. I felt tempted to call them to tell them what they needed for their new pet, but the crowd picked up for the rest of the afternoon and I got too busy to think about them. At the end of the day, I started to pack up my displays. I still had some Easter items left over, but not as many as I feared. Also, I needed just a little bit more for rent. At least I still had an entire month to cover for what I needed. As I packed up, a person stopped in front of my table. I heard him call me a few times, but it didn't register he was talking to me. Miss, may I ask you a few questions? He asked once again with the kind expression. I met his eyes and realized he wanted to speak with me. I quickly put aside what I was doing to focus on him. Oh, right. Sorry, what do you need? I asked him. I looked over to him, wondering what on earth he wanted. He wore a dark suit, making him appear at a place in a nearly empty market. His skin was dark and his hair was done up in dreadlocks he pulled back in a thick ponytail. His face was clear of wrinkles, but his hair had gray mixed in with black. His eyes were the most stunning color of gold I've ever seen. I'm Agent Kamato-John. I'm looking into the man who sold rabbits today. A few tables said you knew someone who bought one, is that correct? He showed an official-looking badge, but I didn't catch what agency he was part of. His voice was deep, with a hint of an accent to show his roots. His eyes and his kind face made me start fiddling with my hair like a damn schoolgirl. He patiently waited for me to collect myself enough to answer back without embarrassing myself. Yeah, they were my relatives. Is there something wrong with the rabbits? I asked, starting to get slightly worried. He paused to smile again, debating on what he should tell me. The rabbits may be carrying some sort of illness. However, we doubt it can spread to humans, but it could pass along to other wildlife. We would like to avoid such a thing. You should contact your relatives to advise them to humanely dispose of the rabbit that they purchased today. Burning the body is also recommended. His voice remained friendly, but I shrank back a little from what he said. I hated the idea of needing to kill an innocent animal. I then got angry at the fact that I trusted the man who sold the rabbits in the first place. I should have gone to the event coordinators to ask them to kick him out. The jerk knew he had sick rabbits. He just sold them to people to get some fast cash, not caring about how devastated all these kids will be after the new pet died after a few days. That's just wrong. Who would do such a thing? I asked, getting more upset the longer I thought about those poor bunnies. I wish I could have come sooner. I doubt the rabbits are gonna live this weekend. We'll be getting the word out and hopefully the families can do the dreadful task of disposing their new pet before the poor thing dies painfully from an illness. The agent explained. I wondered how the community will react to this news. There was gonna be a massive uproar if this got out. I bet the parents would be flooding the hospitals, concerned with their child caught some sort of mystery illness if they didn't come in contact with one of the deceased Easter rabbits. The agent pulled out a card with his name and number. Oddly enough, the card didn't say what company he worked for. Please tell your family to call this number. If you're comfortable giving out their address, we could send out some agents to deal with the rabbit. However, it may take until Monday. They should take care of the issue as soon as possible," he mentioned. I looked down at the card, debating if I should give my relative's address out to a stranger. I wanted to trust him. He acted professionally, and I didn't give him information I would risk my niece getting sick. I disliked my uncle, not enough to punish his daughter. I wrote down their info, hoping I made the right choice. The event coordinators were pushing people to get packed up. The temperature started to drop to make others move faster to leave. The agent thanked me again, and he gave a few polite parting words. I saw him walk over to one of the people who ran the event to ask more questions. I left a message for my aunt before I packed up. I should have called her or done more. By the time I got home and unpacked, I was too tired to do anything. I left her another message along with the agent's number, asking her to contact him. Then I collapsed into bed for the night. The week before, I overworked myself to get ready for the table. I always pushed myself too hard before an event. I didn't have a shift the next day. I slept in and did nothing. No messages came in from my family, which I expected. As the day crawled on, I started to get worried about them. I almost went over to their place, but decided not to. I would have given it one more day before meddling in their business. I wondered if I had gone over sooner, and if I could have changed what happened. When Sunday morning rolled around, I decided to go over. They might still be at church, so I planned to go outside and steal a rabbit to hand it over to the agent I spoke with. Hell, if I acted fast enough, I might be able to adopt one from the shelter and replace it. The local shelter had a few brown ones that look a lot like the ones that they bought on Friday. My plan fell through when I pulled out in front of their place to see their car still in the driveway. This wasn't right. They never missed church. I was worried that they somehow already got sick. I stayed in front of their house, tried calling first, but no one answered. I then called the agent, hoping to get more information about what I was dealing with. His line was busy, and I debated to call an ambulance but held off. I didn't know if they were sick or not just yet. And if they were, did they need to be collected by a certain agency so they wouldn't spread whatever they caught through the local hospital? Or was I just thinking over all this? I needed to see them and then figure out what to do or who to call. My knocks on the front door went unanswered. I knew where the spare keys was hidden. I would be breaking in, and my uncle would call the police on me if he was angry enough. Still, despite all the risk, I needed to see if they were alright. I found the key, pausing to gather myself before I opened the door. No answer came back when I called out. Their shoes were on the rack by the door, showing me they were still home. Fear rocked my body, and yet I pushed on. I thought I heard a sound, and I couldn't figure out where the cause was coming from the kitchen. I made my way closer, stopping in the living room. My eyes landed on a still shape in the middle of the carpet. My stomach turned at the sight. The rabbit they bought was on its side, its neck broken and its face covered with blood. Trails of the blood led to the kitchen. Then I noticed some fresh scratch marks on the wall of the small door under the stairs. The handle rattled, causing me to jump. I should have left then. The whimpering sounds coming from behind the door made me forget what I should have done. My niece was there, most likely scared and hurt. At the very least, sick from whatever her new pet carried into the house. I made the mistake of opening the door. The light blinded what waited inside for a second. I stared dumbfounded at the small creature I almost recognized. The body was covered in brown fur, and the legs bent oddly. An open wound showed the poor creature's arm. It looked like to be a bite mark for something with large teeth. The dress the creature wore was one my niece owned. Red eyes landed on me, and the thing let out a heart-stopping screech. I reacted on reflex. I slammed the door at the same time it jumped at me. The small body slammed against the wood and collapsed on the other side of the door. I locked the door, then took a few steps back to figure out what the hell I just saw. There wasn't any way that thing was my niece, or any natural thing for that matter. A snapping sound came from the kitchen. I really should have left. My mind wasn't working properly after what I just saw. I wanted answers. That led me into the other room to see a sight I will never be able to forget. My aunt was on the floor. her stomach missing from the monster sitting over her body, digging into her flesh with sharp teeth. The sound I heard was him snapping off a rib to chew on. The beast had the same brown fur and large eyes as a small monster locked away under the stairs. His legs were also an unnatural shape, almost like animal legs that ended in paws with sharp claws. The creature was so focused on the meal in front of it didn't notice me until I let out a noise of horror. The head raised to meet my eyes. An open bite wound on his arm showed he could be harmed. We both moved at the same time. The monster charged forwards, and I ducked towards the counter. My hand landed on the handle of a wooden cutting board I made for my aunt. I swung into the monster's face with such force. Pain traveled up my arm. It was good to know that my aunt cared enough to keep me one of the gifts I'd given her. Tears started on the corner of my eyes when I realized I would never see her again. I needed to take care of her killer. Breaking down wasn't an option. The smack from the cutting board gave me enough time to grab a large knife out of the wooden block. I didn't hesitate. The knife made a wide arc in the air, slicing out the monster's large ear. He screamed, backing away for a moment. Regardless of how many hits I got in, I would not be able to win the fight against this thing. I ran towards the back door, knowing I needed to get the hell out of there. The front door was too far away, and the monster got caught behind the dining room table long enough for me to get outside. I tripped over a scooter, landing hard on the ground. That saved my life. The beast burst out of the door after me and sailed over my head when I fell over. He landed on the grass, his feet getting tangled up in more scattered toys. I took a chance to stab my only weapon into the back of the monster. He cried out in pain, the sharp clawed hand reaching up to remove the blade. It was too hard for me to pull it back out. I let out the knife and made another run for it. My legs carried me around the side of the house, fear making my head swim. I heard the monster behind me and yet didn't dare to look to see how close it was. A person turned the corner, making me nearly run right into him. At the last second, I caught myself and corrected my path to run behind him. The agent I met at the market stood facing the creature charging at us without any sort of weapon in his hands. His face appeared calm, almost relaxed. I expected him to pull out a gun. Instead, he started to raise his hands in some sort of flowing practice movements. His voice was low, saying words I didn't understand to punctuate each short pose with his hands. He raised his arms so his hands made corners of an imaginary box he was looking through. Those sharp claws were a hair away from slicing his finger off. That's when a golden light appeared in front of him. The oddest explosion tore through the area in front of the strange agent. A shock wave knocking me back. The golden light was blasted the monster away to nothing. It tore apart the side of the house along with the grass. I sat on the ground, breathing hard in shock over what I had just witnessed. Instead of addressing what had happened, Agent Jan looked over his shoulder towards me, an amused expression on his face.
"Are you alright, Miss Cora?"
he asked. I opened my mouth, but no words came. I did call him, but I wasn't expecting any of this. Another man in a suit came rushing over. His black hair was a mess. He quickly helped me to look over my feet with any injuries. What the fuck happened? I finally asked. I tried not to swear if I could help it. I think I earned being able to voice my frustrations. The other agent looked towards Jan, silently saying he didn't want to tell me what was up. He cared about keeping all of this under wraps. Jan didn't. He pulled out a package of chocolate-covered biscuit sticks. He offered me some, but I refused. After a few bites, he went on to explain what I saw.
"There are supernatural things out there. It's our job to take care of them. The man who started all this, of a species very closely related to rabbits. We aren't entirely sure why he released infected rabbits into your human population. The theory is to get revenge on the ones who buy live Easter rabbits only to mistreat them."
Jen explained, then went back to eating as he let the information sink in. All this happened because of a reason like that? A wave of emotion came over me. I didn't know how to feel. I mostly felt pissed off.
"It's a shame that your family didn't listen to your warnings. I apologize for not getting here sooner,"
Jan said in a serious tone. I didn't blame him for any of this. I was still alive because he arrived on time. I assumed he had a lot of rabbits to track down. I can't believe they would rather hate me for what I am enough to risk their lives, I said bitterly. I wondered if we were on better terms, then I wouldn't have been able to save their lives. A cell phone rang and a black-haired agent turned away to answer the call. He spoke and then turned to Jan to fill him in. They found the farm and the ones who started all this. They want you to arrive right away to take care of it before we know their locations. Other agents could take over on checking up on suspected families, he explained. I hated to think of how many other people became victims over the past 2 days. From what I could tell, the bites from the rabbits turned to humans into monsters I'd seen. And those monsters can affect someone else. A lot of people are in danger if this wasn't taken care of quickly. That reminded me that my poor niece was still under the stairs. I dreaded the idea that there wasn't a cure for her. I told the agents about her, and they grimly nodded. They wouldn't dispose of her right in front of me, though. I'll head out right now to take care of the farm, Jan announced. He turned to leave, and I took hold of his sleeve, making him stop. I'm coming with you. These bastards killed my family, I sternly told him. They didn't care enough to listen to your warnings, and yet you want to risk your life to avenge them? He pointed out. They were family. I don't need to get along or even like them to love them, I corrected. He looked over me for a few seconds and then gave in. The other agent didn't like the idea, though. He started between us to talk me out of the suicide mission. She's human. I don't think she... The man started. She's lasted long enough against the monster for us to arrive without any weapons. If I borrow something powerful a human can use, I'm positive Cora here will be useful on this mission. Jan vouched for me. I doubted how useful I was going to be. At least someone believed in me. The other agent frowned and chewed on his bottom lip, not wanting to give in. We do not have time to call our boss to approve the temporary partner request. Knowing Lupa, he'll sign off if it's a humans risking their life. I can grab a weapon and then get to the farm within a few minutes. I'll take any of the blame if Cora dies on the mission. With a long sigh, the agent gave in. It was 2 against 1, and risking my life was my choice. He caved, and then got moving with Jan. I followed behind him, wondering how the hell we would get to the farm in a few minutes. We weren't close to one. The other agent explained a few things. They could use magic to transport them to where they needed to go. He said he also evacuated the neighborhood before they arrived to save me. That explained why no one called the police when Jan created an explosion. He then disappeared into their car for a minute. When he came back out, he held out a long sword with the deep red polished scabbard. He handed it over, and the golden handle felt almost too hot to hold. He then warned me about what the mission to the farm would be like. Jan was going to charge into the fight, whatever he saw. I wasn't strong enough for this sort of thing, and I refused to stay behind. At least he made his best effort to change my mind. Jan called my name. The man stood in the middle of a circle he drew with the dark chalk surrounded by odd symbols. He looked calm, which helped me deal out with my fear. I only trusted a man I had barely spoken with. I stepped towards, ready to fight for my life, avenging my caring, yet misguided aunt, and for my niece whose dad kept growing. Maybe a little bit for my uncle as well. I never would have expected doing a simple Easter craft table will lead to fighting were-rabbits monsters alongside an agent who dealt with supernatural threats every day. Life was weird like that. No matter how scared I felt, I refused to give in. With the borrowed sword at my side, I was ready to face some nightmares, not knowing if I was going to come out on the other side. I didn't know what to expect when I stepped into the circle. It felt like I just missed a step, then dizziness overtook my vision and lasted for a few seconds. When I recovered, I saw I no longer stood in the city, but in front of a farmhouse. Barren fields surrounded us, making me think no one kept up this farm for a while. A barn stood in the distance behind the house, worn and falling apart. I held the borrowed sword closer to my body, feeling the painful heat to focus on that instead of my fear. The other agent was right. I didn't belong here. I was risking my life for a chance to get some payback for the people who didn't even like me. I was here now, so none of that mattered. I braced myself next to Agent Jan, wondering what we should do first. While we were looking, made it easy to find them. Glowing circles appeared on the ground around us. They look a lot like the one I stepped into to get transported here. A massive claw came out from the ground, and inside the circle in front of us followed the huge body of a monster I would barely be able to call a rabbit. The entire head was missing. The body was the size of a small car with almost human-like arms covered in fur. The back half just looked like an oversized rabbit. A smell of rot hit us, making my eyes tear up. I turned my head away for a second as the other monsters came up from the ground. At least 5 of the larger ones, all missing parts yet still moved around. A small horde of regular rabbits came bursting from the barn. They would reach us in a minute or so. I knew they carried the same disease that infected my family. If one took a bite out of us, it would be all over. I reached down to pull out the blade from the scabbard, hand trembling. This was all too much for me. I didn't know what I was thinking about insisting on coming here. At least Jan didn't appear worried in the slightest. He pulled out another package of chocolate-covered biscuit sticks. I expected him to start fighting. At least none of the monsters came at us just yet. The man I met at the market night pulled himself up from the last glowing circle. A hatred as hot as the hilt in my hand came to my chest. I never wanted to kill someone as much as I did in that moment. I try to be understanding when it comes to people, even if they showed some sort of unjust hatred towards me. I wanted to understand their reasoning and why they felt the way they did. I could simply not figure out why this person sold rabbits to punish people buying them at Easter.
Is this the corporation so low on agents that they resorted to recruiting humans? Ones that do the arts and crafts at that? He commented as he brushed some dirt off his ill-fitted suit. Yes, but Corey wanted to come by here at her own choice. I assume it was to speak with you.
Jan said as he finished off his little snack. At least he put the trash in his pocket and didn't litter. The other man appeared to be confused for a moment. He didn't order his monsters to attack because he was curious about what I had to say to him. "You're killing rabbits!" I snapped, making him take a slight step backwards. He recovered and I went on. "What's the point of doing all this if you're just killing rabbits? People I cared about died for just such a stupid reason, and you're hurting the ones you're trying to save." I expected him to get angry. Instead, he smiled in a way that made my skin crawl.
Sadly, yes. Some sacrifices must be made. However, I shall remember each name, my brothers and sisters, that shall change the world.
He replied, his smile growing wider. "Change the world?" I pressed, confused. He extended his arms to his side as if trying to clue me into a bigger picture.
Did you think this was because of just one holiday? No, rabbits have been abused for so many other reasons, and I'm tired of it. We are poorly cared for as rabbits, raised for meat and prey for other creatures. No more of any of that. This infection was gonna go through this entire world, changing everything into a form of rabbits. No longer are we gonna be at the bottom of the food chain. This world is gonna be ours, and there's nothing a simple human can do about it.
This guy really went off the deep end into the villain's master plan monologue. He even finished with the crazed laughter that echoed through the night. I was about to respond to him, but I felt a hand on my shoulder. Jean looked down at me, an amused look on his face.
There is no reasoning with insanity,
the agent said. He was right about that. I raised the sword in front of me, the heavy blade in my hands, and the metal so hot I nearly dropped it. I needed to use it or else I would die here. Some of the smaller diseased rabbits reached us and jumped through the air wanting to tear into our flesh. I swung the sword too soon, but it didn't matter. A burst of flame came from the blade and shot out so far it made the larger creatures move back. The sword pulled something from my chest. The feeling was very unpleasant. I gritted my teeth, ready to keep going. I hated the fact that we needed to kill so many rabbits. If we didn't, they would go on to infect others, and then they would go on to kill or infect more people until they were killed. I had no idea what the corporation was, or how many agents they employed. I figured it would be an issue if all these creatures got out. We needed to stop this here, or else so many more innocent lives would be lost. Jan took over fighting the larger creatures. The man in the blue suit disappeared once we started fighting. I hoped he was just hiding somewhere instead of running away. I didn't have time to try and find him. I was getting swarmed with the small rabbits and my sword could barely hold them back. I looked over in time to see Jan get caught by the leg. The headless monster grabbed him by the ankle. His body tossed into the air, making me think he was going to die when he hit the ground. The calm expression remained on his face. The moment he started falling back to earth, he put his hands out in front of him as he was looking through a wide imaginary box again. A burst of uncontrolled golden light blasted through the creature that tossed him. I didn't have the chance to see his landing. I got too busy swatting away rabid rabbits with the magic sword. My chest ached as much as my hands. I couldn't keep this up for much longer, and yet it didn't seem like I had put a dent in the horde. I faltered for half a second. The pain almost overwhelmed me. I thought of my niece, and a fury rage smashed her sword. The more rabbits I killed, the fewer children were at risk for getting their lives cut short. Another golden blast landed too close to where I fought. The shockwave nearly blew me off my feet, but it also knocked aside some of my attackers to let me get a breather. I made the mistake of taking a short break in the middle of a fight. By the time I turned my head to face the rabbit with the foaming mouth of teeth, it was too late to react. A black shape came between my face and with deadly teeth. They sank into the flesh, but not mine. Jan blocked the rabbit with his arm. With a graceful movement, he threw the small animal off, but the damage had already been done. The rabbit drew blood. My heart sank, thinking about how now the only person who stood a chance against saving the world from a were-rabbit infection now just might become one. I sat stunned, but Jan didn't waste a second. He took the sword from my hands and, to my horror, sliced off his right arm at the shoulder. The flaming sword burned the wound shut. He made a slight expression of pain. He noticed how my mouth fell open at his actions. Jan used the sword to clear out more rabbits near us long enough to speak to me.
Don't worry, I have great benefits,
he said while flashing a smile. For a second, I thought he meant his arm could be cured of infection and then reattached. He disproved that theory when he kicked a severed arm into a horde of rabbits ready to distract them. They fell on it, and the sounds of flesh ripping and teeth on the bones nearly made me sick. At least that gave me enough time to recover.
You have made great effort, but I am not the only one who is part of this plan. If I fail, then another shall take my place next Easter. As it stands, that forethought was not required.
The man appeared, arms out to his side with excitement clear on his face. I had only one chance. I snatched the sword from Jan and put everything I had into one swing into his direction. The flames left a deep groove in the ground as he burst towards them. The last of the large creatures stepped in front, shielding the ringleader. The blast of flames tore the monster in half, but it died down before they could reach the right target. I felt so disappointed of myself that I fell short. The sword drained so much from me that I doubted I had another large-scale attack in me. I heard that man laughing as the monster fell. At least one of us was having a good time. The smaller rabbits turned towards the noise. To my shock, they started to swarm him, ignoring us.
You never stood a chance. A human and now one-armed agent can't stop the flood. The world is now ours.
I turned away, not wanting to see him be eaten by the smaller creatures. Why did he just let them do that? Why give up his life? The answer shortly came. The rabbits that got a mouthful of the man's flesh backed away. Their bodies cracked and twisted. My stomach tightened when I watched one break in half. Two halves quickly reformed into two full rabbits. New rabbits turned and took a bite of the nearest living thing. The moment they got a mouthful of flesh, their bodies started to separate again. For some reason, whatever was in his blood activated the supernatural rabbits to multiply.
I wondered when he was going to bring out his trump card. He didn't want to show us hand until he felt positive we weren't going to be strong enough to defeat his army in one swoop.
Jan spoke, his tone even. I looked up at him, exhausted and feeling sick from our bleak future. What could we even do? He needed both arms for his box attack. I couldn't even stand, let alone lift my arms to use a sword. The rabbits were too busy attacking each other, but they would turn on us just yet. They found the bodies of the fallen monsters, the dead flesh fueling the swarm even more. Would these small creatures even need to infect the others?
or they become a flood that ate every living creature on the planet. You came ready to risk your life. We are facing a certain death. What are you gonna do now? Jan asked, his voice bringing me back to the moment. His words didn't sound cruel. Rather, it was as if he wanted to test me. If I was gonna die, I might as well do what I had tagged along for. I pulled the last strength together to bring the sword down one last time. The burst of flames was nowhere near as impressive as the last attack. I still felt proud of myself for forcing it out, and scared, mostly scared. The last attack was the best thing I could do. I doubted my aunt or niece would feel proud of me for dying here. At least I did something. Jan slowly grabbed me around the waist to lift my body off the ground. We jumped back a few feet. He carefully set me back down and tossed off his suit jacket. It landed over my face, blinding me for a second. I smelled a hint of smoked cigarette clinging to the fabric. Turns out he did smoke, but not often. Try to cover up yourself as much as possible with that jacket. I needed to see if you're ready to accept your death. I work alone because most supernatural creatures cannot survive the backlash when I get serious. I am uncertain if you'll make it out alive, Jan explained. His gold eyes and kind smile made it hard to be mad at him for letting me come along on a suicide mission. He wanted to let me get my revenge regardless of the cost of my life. I bet he also made himself appear weak to mastermind the stupid end of the world plan, felt comfortable revealing the entire plot. The sounds of the rabbits getting closer distracted me. I did as I was told and huddled under the jacket. I still peeked towards Jan to see what he might do with one arm. What I saw made it clear he didn't care in the slightest about his missing arm. He was one of the rare people who didn't need two. He didn't say any odd words or use any hand signals. He just raised the left hand, each finger touching the tip of his thumb, making a circle as he looked through. That was it. A flash of gold came from his eyes. I looked over the horse, seeing a very small ball of golden light appear, hovering in the air above them. For a moment, gravity stopped around them. Each small body started to drift up, all with sounds of stopping. Nothing. I felt a blast hit my chest and my vision go white. I wasn't aware I got knocked out until I woke up next. From what I heard, it was a miracle I wasn't turned into dust like the entirety of the farm. From what I guessed, Jan's power might become stronger the more he focuses it on one spot, like a hose with water. A larger opening meant a less powerful stream. A focused one created more pressure. He kept both of his eyes open when he let loose on the farm. I feared just how much damage you can do if you fully focused on one spot. My eyes opened and I found myself in an unfamiliar clinic bed. My entire body hurt. My fingers and toes had a static tingle at the tips as if they lacked blood flow. I slowly sat up, flexing them, trying to get rid of the feeling. It refused to completely go away. I heard some papers rustling, drawing my eyes to the noise. A person sat in the chair wearing scrubs, working away. I guess it was a guy from the flat chest, but their face did give a hint of a gender. They turned towards me. They turned to give me a smile, noticing I woke up. "Could I hold your hand?" I asked on reflex, my brain not fully waking up just yet. Their body was made out of a clear pastel blue substance. It looked solid, and I wanted to know what their skin felt like. "Yes, because you asked nicely." They rolled over an office chair to start going over my vitals. Their hands were firm, yet slightly squishy at the same time. "My name is Robin. I work at the clinic here. So far, you're looking good," they commented on after a few minutes of checking me over. "Oh, like a robin's egg," I commented. The body color looked like the same shade. A smile came to their face, and I assumed I was one of the few people who made the connection. The tingling still had gone away, no matter how much I shook my hands. "I think you'll still be stuck with that feeling for a few weeks. Agent Jan let out a lot of magic. If you were a supernatural creature, you'd be dead. You just took in more magic than your body is used to, causing some damage," Robin explained. I gave them a confused expression, not understanding why a human would have survived when a supernatural creature wouldn't. "It's hard to explain. Simply put, Creatures can absorb magic in the air. Humans won't unless there is a lot around them. Even then, if they don't take in the same amount as something supernatural, each creature has a limited magic that they can take in at once. If they get overloaded, their body breaks down. Humans as well. But that happens if the magic is forcefully pushed through with physical contact. I guess that made sense. I bet there was a lot more to all of this, but Robin kept it simple. A knock came at the door. I wasn't expecting Jan to come into the room. I assumed he would be too busy to check in on me.
"How is Miss Cora doing?" he asked Robin.
Just fine. I just need to do some work around the clinic. I'll let you two catch up. Cora can leave at any point she feels like. Robin got up to leave us alone. I wasn't sure who to ask first. The moment Robin left, Jan pulled out a long slim cigar from his suit pocket. With one hand he lit it, his right sleeve still empty. Guilt tore out my stomach seeing his missing arm. That didn't stop me for scolding him. "You shouldn't smoke in a clinic," I told him.
"You sound like Robin. It's fine if it's only one,"
Jan replied. I let it go. From the looks of it, he only smoked when he finished a case. Maybe only when there weren't too many casualties as a small reward. "I'm sorry about your arm," I spoke in a small voice. I lived with the minor damage, and yet he wasn't so lucky.
"Oh, don't worry about it. I'll have a replacement in a few days. It's the second time I've lost it. I've also replaced my legs 3 times, some organs more than a dozen. My body does well with artificial replacements, unlike most supernatural creatures."
My mouth dropped open slightly over his words. Aside from the fact that these creatures found a way to artificially make arms and legs, he'd gone through so much to need new parts so often. I hated to think what the other monsters he faced in his past. "That's horrible," I said, shaking my head.
"It's the job I signed up for. I understand the risk. Not unlike you changing in to avenge your family. Do you feel any better now that you know that the man who harmed them is gone?"
he asked as he blew away the smoke from me. I thought about the question for a few seconds before giving my honest answer. I don't know how I feel. I'm glad he's not around to hurt anyone else. But it doesn't feel fair. My aunt and my niece. I need to arrange a funeral for my aunt. And I appreciate the agent waiting until I left to take care of my niece. I said, my chest aching.
"The corporation had already taken care of your aunt's body and arranged a funeral. Fully paid for. The cover-up story is ghastly that caused an explosion. About your niece, we didn't kill her,"
Jan said and waited for my reaction. I stood up feeling dizzy. Was there some way to change her back? Could I ever see her little smiling face again?
"I don't think we'll be able to turn her back into a human. She only becomes violent when others are inside the room, and she still carries the virus that changes others by her bite. There is hope that it can be removed, and maybe she'll be able to become a tamer as time goes on. At the very least, she has all her needs met and a decent life, even if it's one where she's locked away."
Again, I didn't know how to feel. I knew that they were treating her in some kind of way, and maybe if they studied that virus she carried, they might be able to create a cure so others wouldn't be able to share the same fate as her or my uncle. I chewed on the inside of my cheek, the slight tingling on my fingertips, an annoying feeling. Would I be able to see her? I asked. Jan nodded. At some point I could, but behind some glass. The corporation will work with me to do their best to bring my little niece back to who she was before it was possible. My eyes landed on the calendar on the wall and my heart dropped. It was 4 days after we found the farm. Did I really sleep for that long? I have a shift at work. I'll get fired for no call, no show. I gasped when I realized the date. Jan was amused by my minor freakout. He carefully stubbed out his cigar and hid the remains away in a small silver case.
"We spoke with your boss. You have a month off to recover. Don't worry about it. Also, you were paid for the job. It was made official after the job, but you worked as a temporary contract worker. I sent along the payment I would have earned from this case to your bank account. I don't need the money right now."
Oh, I didn't think about the fact that agents got paid. This was a job after all, and we didn't work for an hour. How long was the fight? I bet they got paid over minimum wage due to how dangerous their work was. I expected under $100 for the job. I believe the total comes out to a little over 200,000. No taxes at the end of the year, so don't worry about that. I needed to sit down. I blankly stared at Jan for expecting this to be a joke. His neutral expression never dropped. Agents got paid well for saving the world. But how the hell did one company have so much to just give away like this? He ignored my reaction and kept speaking. People who encounter supernatural creatures are at a higher risk of being killed by one. There's a good chance you'll come across something dangerous in the future. Keep my number. Call me if something happens. His golden eyes landed on me, and I felt my face flush. He noticed that reaction and needed to turn away to hide a smile. Too old for you. Call me forever in any danger. Jan said, a slight laugh in his voice. I wanted to get up and punch him in his arm. Yes, I did like him, but I knew from the start he wouldn't feel the same way. And now he was trying not to let me see him laugh over the fact that I had a crush on him. I'm glad you lost your arm. You're mean. Not my proudest moment, at least he took it well. We both laughed a little. Robin poked her head inside the room to see if everything was alright. Robin smelled the hint of cigar in the room and let Jan have it over smoking inside the clinic. It was an odd sight watching a powerful person like him take verbal abuse from a person much shorter and cuter. Robin finally stopped, letting us both leave. I promised I would call Jan if anything odd happened. I also threatened to abuse the fact that I knew his work number. He took me back to my apartment. I watched him leave, aware he was off to help save the world once again. The year crawled down with much too happening. I saw my niece twice. She looked like a monster, but they gave her a large living area with lots of toys. She was happy despite what she turned into. They still couldn't find any living creature to go into the same room as her without a violent outburst. But there was hope in that few years. She would get better at being in contact with others. I hadn't seen any signs of the supernatural creatures since. I figured they didn't want to mess with me because I had an agent's number on speed dial. As the next Easter crept closer, I started to dread the idea that more of the diseased rabbits were going to be sold to unsuspecting victims. Jan hadn't confirmed if there are any more people out there with access to the virus, or planning on taking over the world with rabbits. There was a chance it could happen again. So do me a favor, and stick with chocolate rabbits this year.